a series where we're identifying bones and their landmarks. So we're going to cover today the pelvic girdle and the lower appendages, the two legs. And we might as well just jump right in on that, and we'll start with the pelvic girdle. So this is composed of two bones, and what we're going to be identifying on these two bones are the following things. So let me grab my little highlighter. So composed of three parts, we'll look at that in just a moment: ilium, ischium, and pubis. The ilium is the most superior and largest area of the hip, and that includes something called the iliac crest, which we'll take a look at, which is for muscle attachment. So, muscle attachment. The greater sciatic notch, which the sciatic nerve passes through. And we'll take a look at the ischium, which is the inferior and posterior area of the bone, and it contains the ischial tuberosity. And here it's going to be the origin of the biceps femoris muscle, long head, semitendinosus muscle, and the semimembranosus muscle. So there are three separate muscles that are attaching there. Then we'll look at the pubis, which is the most anterior area, and the pubic symphysis, which is the anterior joint between the two hip bones. And then the acetabulum, which is the socket for the hip, that forms the hip joint. Okay. We'll look at the pubic crest, which is the origin for the erectus abdominis muscle. We'll look at the anterior superior iliac spine, which is the origin of the sartorius muscle. And we'll look at the anterior inferior iliac spine, which is the origin for the rectus femoris muscle. Okay. And then we will look at and compare male and female pelvises and see what characteristics separate them. So let's begin with the beginning, and that would be looking at the bones, or this bone, as three bones that have come together to form a single bone. So quite literally, when this bone is forming, these three areas that are identified here in the colors, the red, the blue, and the tan, were separate bones, and they come together and they form one single bone. So if you were looking at a human in its early stage of development, you would find three separate distinct regions of bone development, which will eventually come together to form a single bone. So the top part here, that is the ilium, and this is the ischium, and this is the pubis in red. Okay. Let's see. I believe that our own textbook has a similar picture, which we can use. So here it is. Okay. So ilium, ischium, and pubis, the three regions that we just identified on the other bones, on the other picture. Okay. All right, well, let's begin then with the iliac crest. And that's very easily seen. It is very distinct. It is this whole edge along this top part here. That's the iliac crest. So if we're looking at our bone, this would be what we're looking at. This is the same bone that is being pictured here, the same orientation. So there's that big socket. This is the pubis. This is the ischium. Here's the ilium. And that whole edge right along the top there is the iliac crest. Okay. We're going to go through and identify these on the picture in just a moment, but let's go through and identify the structures first. Okay. Then the greater sciatic notch, which you can see very clearly in this image. It's a very large notch, and it is impossible to miss. So coming back and looking at our bone, there it is right there. That's the iliac, that is the greater sciatic notch. And the sciatic nerve passes through that opening. Okay. On the ischium, we'll have the ischial tuberosity. And here is the ischium here. And the tuberosity is better seen actually in this image. So let's look at that. There it is right there. So it is a very rough, bony portion here. And you're physically, if you're sitting down right now, you're sitting on this. So this is the bony part that is in contact with the bottom of your, with the top of the seat that you're sitting on. So that's the ischial tuberosity. Take a look at this, the actual bone itself, and there we have it. That's it right there. That's the ischial tuberosity. Okay, located right there. The next set of structures is going to be found on the pubis. So the pubis contains the pubic symphysis, and that's where the two bones come together. And here we can see that this is the pubic symphysis right here, that structure right there. Okay. That pad represents fibrocartilage. So these two bones are welded together there in the front of your body with fibrocartilage. And so this portion is the pubis here. This is the ilium, and this is the ischium down here. Okay, and there's the ischial tuberosity. So that's that. Okay. The pubic symphysis. Ischial tuberosity. We did that already. The pubis. The pubic symphysis, the acetabulum, all right? Acetabulum is the big opening, the hole right here, in which the head of the femur fits. So if I have my femur, I just put that right in there, and that's how you build that socket joint there. It's a ball and socket joint, just like the shoulder is, but as you can see, it's much more enclosed, and that's because what we're looking for there is strength and stability, as opposed to flexibility. So we take a look at this drawing. There's the acetabulum. Okay, that structure right there. All right. The pubic crest, which is the origin of the rectus abdominis muscle. So here, it has been worn away. It's kind of broken here, but that's these white areas, the two parts of it, one for each bone. That's the pubic crest, and that's where we're going to attach the rectus abdominis muscle, right there and right there. Okay. I want to look at that in a picture. We certainly can do that. Here we go. So there it is, my pubic crest. One there, one there. Okay. And you can see the pubic symphysis. Anterior superior iliac spine and anterior inferior iliac spine. So once again, if we let's turn to this model. So this, if you look carefully, there's a little point that sticks out here. So a point that sticks out here, and there's a point that sticks out here. This is the superior, or the anterior superior iliac spine, and this is the anterior inferior iliac spine. So obviously iliac because it's part of the iliac muscle. Let's take a look at an image. We can identify those there. So here, superior, so that's the anterior superior iliac spine. And there's the anterior inferior iliac spine. So all of those muscle attachment for both of those, which you'll be learning as we go through and study the muscles. Okay? All right, so let's find a good image. And I'm going to go to page 13 of the appendicular skeletal handout. And we have a couple of pictures that we could take advantage of here and here. we'll use both of them and mark them up and identify the various structures that we've just learned. So let's begin with the iliac crest. Get rid of this. This is on the way. So the iliac crest, we'll turn to our color palette and we'll just mark that there and there. That's my iliac crest. And we'll identify that as the iliac crest. Iliac crest. Okay. The greater sciatic notch. Here we're going to do it right there. It's easier. It can be seen here. I'll just blue here, and blue here. So, and by the way, we might as well be consistent. Pink along the top here. Okay. Okay. So, again, okay, and then the greater sciatic notch. Okay. Okay. And here, that's my greater sciatic notch. Okay. Next, ischial tuberosity, and here I can't really see it too well on this picture, so I'm going to use this one down here to identify that. And let's go with a nice orange. So that's going to be that structure right there. And so, okay, so that is going to be the ischial tuberosity. Ischial tuberosity. Okay. The pubic crest, or the pubic symphysis is first, actually. Pubic symphysis. So that's going to be, let's do that in yellow. That's where those two come together. That's my pubic symphysis. Pubic symphysis. Acetabulum. All right, let's do that. So the acetabulum, let's do that in green. There's this big socket. That's really easy to see. There's my acetabulum. Acetabulum. Pubic crest. Excellent. Pubic crest. Let's see. I'm going to do, see if this works. Nope. Does not work. So let's do something else. Let's do this. There. There. Okay. So that area right there is going to be my pubic crest. Pubic crest. Okay. Anterior superior iliac spine. Anterior superior iliac spine. If you just let the words talk to you, you will be doing fine. So let's go back here, and mark up this spot here. And that's going to be our anterior superior iliac spine. Okay. Anterior superior iliac spine. And then we have another one, which hopefully this pin works. There we go. Okay. And that is going to be the anterior inferior. So, anterior inferior iliac spine. Okay. All right, so that covers the pelvic bone. And next, what I want to talk about is the difference between a male and female pelvis. So let's turn our attention to that. And yeah, get things all cattywampus here. Start down here and read through what I've written, and then we'll kind of focus on looking at a table. So be able to compare and contrast the female and male pelvis. So what you're going to do is be able to identify maybe 3 or so characteristics or character traits that distinguish between the male and a female pelvis. One of the simplest and most obvious is the pubic arch. So in males, it is less than 90 degrees, and in females, it's greater than 90 degrees. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why these differences are found in the two. If you just use your imagination a little bit, you probably can figure it out. And I might as well go ahead and spill the beans right now. That is that females have to give birth and males don't. And so they have to have a pelvis that is capable of passing a baby through the birth canal and through that through the 2 bones as they form the pelvis girdle, and the males don't have to worry about that. So let's take a look at a chart, and there is an excellent chart that describes differences between males and females, and you will find that chart as soon as I find it on page 248 and 249. So we'll start with 248, and here's the chart. So this is table 8.1, comparison of female and male pelvis. So there's a number of differences, and what I'd like you to do is just go through, look at this, pick out a couple, 3, maybe 4, where you can really see the difference and it makes sense to you, and then use those, because I will test you to see which, to see if you can distinguish between a male and a female. So female, male. So we talked about the pubic arch, and there it is. So very broad, wide pubic arch, and males, this is very narrow here, okay? Look at the difference in the pelvic brim. So females, it's an oval shape, and in males, it's more of a heart-shaped, okay? The false pelvis, which is the distance between this point and that point, very broad in females, much narrower in males, as you can see here. And this flaring of the ilium in the females gives them their typical broader hips when you compare them to males, because of that angle is much more pronounced. Okay, so the iliac crest is less curved, more curved. The ilium is less vertical, more vertical, and this is what they're talking about, vertical as opposed to less vertical. Okay, the sacrum is shorter, wider, and less anteriorly curved. So the sacrum is shorter and wider, whereas the male is more narrow, and it's curved in towards this opening, sort of like a dog with its tail tucked between its legs. That's more like what the male looks like. The second part of that table is on the next page, so it's page 249. And here we can see some other differences. The greater sciatic notch is more broad in females and more narrow in males. And there's a number of differences. I'm going to let you go through and identify them. And what you're going to need to do is be able to distinguish then between a male and a female if you're looking at an image. You know, by looking at these character states and making that distinction. Okay. All right. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is then the legs, the lower extremities. And what we want to do is start with the femur and then move down into the two bones in the lower leg and then finish up with the foot. So with the femur, we have the head, and that's going to, this function of that is to insert into the acetabulum to form the hip joint. We have the neck, which is the narrow constricted region just behind the femur, the head of the femur. Okay. We have the greater trochanter, which is the origin of the vastus lateralis muscle. We have the lateral and medial epicondyles, which is attachment for ligaments of the knee, okay, and lateral and medial condyles, which is the articulation surface with the tibia. Okay. What else do we have? We have something called the fovea capitis, which we'll take a look at, and that's, excuse me, I did the wrong one, attachment for the ligament that forms the connection between the femur and the hip, the acetabulum. Okay, so let's begin with a couple of pictures and start identifying some of these structures. Okay. So here's a nice, really nice image of the femur, and this is from our friend Netter. So all the structures that we're interested in are clearly seen in this drawing. So let's begin at the top, the head. Obvious, very obvious where the head is. Very clearly seen there, okay? And I might as well, let's do this. Let's go ahead and pull in an actual, so there it is. Very clearly the head. So that's that same structure there, okay? The neck, it's the constricted area right behind the head. And you can see it right there. And it's clearly seen on the actual bone itself here. Okay. We have the greater trochanter sitting right here. And we can see it right there. There's the greater trochanter. That structure right there. Okay. The lateral and medial epicondyles. The lateral and medial epicondyles. Well, we know what an epicondyle is. It's sitting above the condyles. The question in our mind is which one is medial and which one is lateral. And in this case, it's quite easy because we simply have to identify the side of the bone that contains the head. We know that's the medial side. And so we just drop down here, and there's my medial epicondyle. And that would be my lateral epicondyle. And there's the condyles themselves. These structures right here. From the posterior, they're more distinctly separated here. All right, so let's take a look at that. So here is the head, the neck, the greater trochanter. And as we move down to the bottom of the bone, we see the medial epicondyle, the lateral epicondyle. These are the two condyles themselves. As I say, from the posterior view, we see them more clearly as being distinct. So there they are. And to distinguish which is which, we again to go back to the head. There it is. There's the head. So we just follow all the way down. This is the medial condyle, and this is the lateral condyle. So very easy as far as the humerus is concerned, finding all these structures. Okay. All right. Well, let's find a good drawing to identify these things with. And I'm going to suggest to you, well, actually, I want to show you something. The fovea capitis. That's something we need to look at. So the fovea capitis, and let's see if this is, yeah, I'm afraid that is the case. Aha, that's interesting. Let's take a look at the image, a picture. Your textbook has a pretty decent picture. Let's find it. Fovea capitis, there it is. All right. The fovea capitis is at the head, or at the very end of the head, I should say. So here is this is the head of the femur, and there's a little kind of depressed area, and that's the fovea capitis. And what that is for is a ligament. So if we look at this, so this is the cartilage that sits on top of the head, and there's a ligament that sticks out. And this ligament attaches itself to the inside of the acetabulum. So they don't, yeah, they're not really showing it very well here, but it's attached to the bone in the acetabulum. Okay. So the reason I said, oh, that's interesting, is because this does not have one. And that's why I said, remember I said that this different coloration here, there was some problem. This person probably had a fracture of some sort in this area, and then the bone repaired itself. But in that fracturing this area, that ligament was broken, and the bones just simply grew over and that person did not end up with a fovea capitis. It would normally look like something like this, and this is a terrible image because it's broken here, so that should be all bone. And then somebody drilled a hole through it at some point in time. Not sure why, but they did. And that's where the fovea capitis was. So unfortunately, when I grabbed these bones, I did not notice that I did not have a good image of this structure, which is the fovea capitis. Anyway, be that as it may, I have found a good image for us to identify the different parts, and that would be the page 16 of the bone handout sheet, the worksheet. Let's go ahead and start to draw in some of these structures. So we'll start with the head, and I can see the head. 16 and 17, actually. Let's start with 17. That's a nice one. 17. I'll do that. 17. So here's my head. Okay. And then you can see it over here. Head. Right. There's the head. Okay. Then there's the neck, which we'll talk about right here. Neck. So that's my neck. Okay. And then we have the greater trochanter. Greater trochanter. Greater trochanter. And then at this distal end of the bone, we have the lateral and medial epicondyles, which is very easily identified. So here and here, okay, here and here, And so we can call this one here and this one here. They're both on the same side of the head, as you can see. So that's my medial epicondyles. And then out here, I have my lateral epicondyle. And finally, we have, and I'll mark it on this side, here and here, the actual condyles themselves. And so that would be, this is going to be, this one here is going to be my medial condyle. And this one would be my lateral condyle. Okay. Now, if we turn, this is page 17, by the way. If we turn back to page 16, I have a nice image right there. We'll go in, identify that spot right there. And that's my, that's the fovea capitis. Fovea capitis. Okay. Oakley dokleys. So the next set of structures are going to be the lower two bones. But before we get there, we have one bone to deal with, which is the patella. And that's the so-called knee bone or kneecap. And do we have a decent picture of that? I'm sure we do. If we just get to it. Okay. Looks like I don't. It's okay. We can deal. It's not that difficult. So, very simply, let's just color it in here. That is the patella. That little bone right there. No biggie. All right, so on the tibia, which is the larger of the two bones in the lower leg, we've got a couple things. We got the tibial tuberosity, which is the attachment for the quadriceps muscle via the patellar ligament. And then we have the lateral and medial condyles, which are going to contribute or articulate with the medial and lateral condyles of the femur. And then we have something called the medial malleolus, which articulates with the talus of the foot and helps to form the ankle joint. Okay, so we'll look at those things. And here we go. Nice little image. Once again, this is from Netter. Excellent drawings. So let's go ahead and identify the things that we were talking about. So this is the big bone, and this is my anterior view, and this is my posterior view of that bone. So notice the difference in the size of the bones. This was not true when we looked at the arms, was it? Each of the bones in the lower arm were relatively about the same size, but here we get a very dramatic difference between the two bones. And as a matter of fact, since we're talking about that, let's go ahead and look at the fibula, which is this very small narrow bone right here. Notice that this bone is articulating with the underside of the lateral condyle of the tibia. And then it goes all the way down and it forms the outer edge, or the inner, I should say, no, I apologize, the lateral side of the ankle. And there's nothing underneath this bone to support weight. So this bone has no function in carrying weight. All the weight from the femur and the rest of the body is traveling down into the foot with the tibia here. Okay, same thing. So this is a smaller bone because it doesn't have to carry weight. All the weight is being carried by this one single bone into the foot. All right, so let's talk about the tibial tuberosity, which is located right there. If I have my tibia here, there it is, the tibial tuberosity. This rough area right there, tibial tuberosity. Lateral and medial condyles. So they are actually on top here. And as you can see, they are flat surfaces. There they are right there. And those are referred to, at least in your textbook, as condyles. Now, which one is lateral and which one is medial? The way to solve that is to come down here and notice at the end of this bone, there's a hook right here, as you can see right there. Now, this bone here is the anterior view, just as this is the anterior view. But notice that the hook is on this side and on this side. So these are two separate bones. So this is this bone here would be on the left side. The one I'm holding on the left side, and this is the right side here. But anyway, be that as it may, as you come down here, you find this little hook. That little hook is called the medial condyle. Excuse me, the medial malleolus. Since this is called the medial malleolus, this is the medial side of the bone. So if you find that and you come up here to the top, then you know that this is the medial condyle here, and this is the lateral condyle on this side. Okay. What else did we talk about? We did that, medial malleolus. So let's go ahead and find ourselves a drawing and identify the parts on this bone. And let's see. Let's take a look at page 20 of the handout. And on page 20, you see this image right here. And we can go ahead and start with the tibial tuberosity, which we'll do in yellow. Tibial tuberosity right here. That's our tibial tuberosity right there. Lateral and medial condyles, they are a little bit difficult to find, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a line. So there, surface right there. And then on the opposite side, we'll do a nice, so that surface right there. Okay. And then the medial malleolus, we'll point that out right here. Medial malleolus. All right. Let's go ahead and write in the names. So this is my tibial tuberosity. That right there is the medial malleolus. Let me make sure I get the spelling right. There you go, medial malleolus. And this is going to be the medial condyle, and that right there is going to be the lateral condyle. Okay. Finally, well, not finally, but the next bone, which is the smaller bone we talked about, is the fibula. And we've got two things to identify in the fibula. And the lateral malleolus, which is going to articulate with the talus, and helps to form the ankle joint, and the head of the fibula, which articulates with the inferior surface of the lateral condyle of the tibia. And we'll come back to our image. So here we are. So there's the head. As you can see, it's articulating with the underside of the lateral condyle. And there is my lateral malleolus. So if we look at typical bone, so this is the part that fits right there. Okay, and it's a little knobby, and it has a smooth surface on the top where you're going to find cartilage. Okay, and then at the distal end, we got this flat and sort of shovel appearance, and it sits there like that. And then this smooth surface here is going to form the outside the outside of the ankle. So when you reach down and touch your ankles, those little bony parts that you refer to as your ankles, you're actually touching either, if you're touching on the inside, you're touching the distal end of the tibia, the medial malleolus. If you're touching on the outside, you're touching this, the distal end of the fibula, which is the lateral malleolus. Okay. So, let's find our picture. There it is. So let's go ahead and we'll bring in a green color for this and a blue color for the head. So this is that's going to be the head of the fibula. And this is going to be the lateral malleolus. Lateral malleolus. Okay. Now we come to the foot. And let's go ahead and take a look at some pictures. Well, get ahead of ourselves. Let's go ahead first and take a look at what it is that we're supposed to see. And there, now we're being organized. There we go. So this is the foot, and we'll start off with a set of bones. These are the tarsal bones, and unlike the carpal bones where you didn't have to identify any of the individual bones, just to collectively know what they are, in this case I'm going to ask you to identify two of the tarsal bones, and this would be the calcaneal bone and the talus. Okay, so you'll need to know those two bones, and on the calcaneal bone, you'll need to know about the calcaneal tuberosity, which is the attachment of the gastrocnemius and the soleus muscle via the Achilles tendon. And the calcaneus is also the largest and strongest of the bones. And the talus is going to articulate with the tibia. So, and let's see if there's more on the next page. No. So we're going to do that first. So let's go ahead and look at those some images for those bones. So this is a superior view of the foot. So you're looking straight down at your foot as if you're about to tie your shoelaces. And this is the bones that we're worried about here. These are the tarsal bones, and the two that we are naming is this one here, which is going to form the heel of your foot. That's the calcaneal bone, and this one here, which is the talus. Okay, it's perhaps seen a little bit more clearly from a lateral view. So here's my talus, and there's my calcaneal bone, and there's the calcaneal tuberosity right there at the edge. Okay, so that's my calcaneal tuberosity. Take a look at the actual structure. So here we are. This is the calcaneal bone right here. You can see it's quite large. This is the bone, Actually, remember I mentioned that there are only 7 of these bones as opposed to 8 of the carpal bones. Notice the size different, and notice that this one is a very large one. This bone right here is actually the amalgamation of 2 bones. So instead of having 8 of the tarsal bones, we only have 7 because the 2 bones here came together and formed one large single one, and that's the calcaneal bone. Calcaneal tuberosity is right here. It's literally the surface where you get a blister on the back of your foot when you're not having broken in your shoes properly. And then this one right here with the very smooth surface, that's the talus. Okay, so all of these bones that you're looking at right there, those are the tarsal bones. And these two, the talus and the calcaneal bone, is the one that you need to know. So let's go ahead and grab ourselves a picture of the foot and identify those bones. And there we go. Here we go. So let's just go with yellow here. This will be the talus. That's the talus bone. And we'll do orange. For the calcaneal bone. And we'll do a nice bright color for the tibial tuberosity. This is on page 25, if you're wondering. Page 25 of the handout. Okay, page 25 of the handout. Okay, so this is my talus. This is the calcaneal bone. And that there is the calcaneal tuberosity. All right. And we've got just a little bit more and we'll be done. This is a nice picture too, actually. I'll only do this as well. Okay, so let's keep the same color scheme. Yellow. Orange. And then that, there it is, right here, the tuberosity. Also a nice picture right down here of the actual foot model. Okay, let's take a look at the last of the structures that we need to know. We'll finish up the bones. And here they are. So we have the metatarsals, and they're numbered 1 through 5, just as we saw with the hand. And then the phalanges, proximal, middle, and distal, just as we saw with the hand as well. And so let's bring the foot back. Metatarsals, starting with the big toe. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Metatarsals, okay? Then we have the phalanges, and it's the same arrangement. Proximal, middle, and distal. The big toe only has 2, proximal and distal. And the numbering system is exactly the same. So this would be the first proximal phalange. This would be the 5th proximal phalange. This would be the 5th distal, and this would be the 1st distal. This one here is the second, middle. Remember, we start here at number 2. We don't jump to 1 because that would be over here. And there is no middle phalange over here. So that's the second, third, fourth, and fifth middle phalange. And that's it for the, last term, hallux. Fancy word for the big toe. Okay. So there we are, folks. We're all set. You have gotten all the information. Now it's up to you to study, 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 and study some more. I will see you again as we begin to talk about muscles, origins, insertions, actions, and that will be so much fun. Talk to you later.